This is a story about the loneliest man in America, and the reason nobody sees him is because he is sitting at a dinner table with his family. We're living through what researchers, journalists, and public health officials have started calling a male loneliness epidemic. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy declared an epidemic of loneliness and isolation in 2023. It was one of the most significant public health warnings in a generation. Studies have found that 15% of men today report having no close friends at all, a number 5 times higher than it was in 1990. That figure comes from Survey Center on American Life Research, and it has been echoed by organizations like the Pew Research Center, which has tracked the collapse of male social connection over the same period. Mental health organizations dedicated entire campaigns to it this year. The conversation is everywhere. But there is a critical assumption buried inside almost all of it. When we picture the lonely man, when we build the image in our heads, we picture someone single, someone alone, someone scrolling through his phone at 11 on a Friday night with no one to call. That picture is wrong. The data tells a different story, and when you look at it closely, it points to something deeply uncomfortable about modern marriage, something that most people, including most married men, are not willing to name. The loneliest men in America are not the ones without partners. In many cases, they are the ones with them. This is the support monopoly, and it is quietly destroying men from the inside out. To understand what is happening, you have to understand how men actually build, or fail to build, social connections. For most men, friendship is transactional in the best possible sense. It is built around shared activity. You become close to the guy you play football with, the colleague you eat lunch with, the neighbor you help fix a fence. The connection is real, but it is almost entirely dependent on the context that created it. Remove the activity, remove the routine, and the friendship begins to fade. Research on men's social behavior consistently finds that male friendships operate with limited emotional disclosure. Men talk about things, sport, work, money, news, but rarely about feelings, fears, or the inner life of their relationships. That is not a character flaw. It is a deeply ingrained social pattern reinforced over decades of cultural signaling about what it means to be a man. You carry your own weight. You do not burden others. You handle it. And the consequence of that pattern is that men's friendships, while genuine, tend to be structurally shallow. They are held together by external scaffolding, what researchers studying relational maintenance would call the situational infrastructure of connection: the job, the team, the regular catch-up. That scaffolding is fragile. It does not require a crisis to collapse. It requires nothing more than life moving on. And life, for most married men, does exactly that. Here is where the support monopoly begins to form. When a man gets married, something shifts in his social architecture, and it happens so gradually that most men never notice until it is already done. The weeknight drinks become less frequent. The standing plans start getting canceled. There are kids, or the plan for kids. There is a mortgage. There is the relentless administrative weight of building a life with another person. The friend group does not dissolve in a single dramatic moment. It simply becomes less available, week by week, month by month, until one day it is effectively gone. Meanwhile, his wife is becoming something more than a partner. She is becoming his entire emotional world. Research on male social behavior confirms what many married men would recognize if they were asked to look honestly at their own lives. Married men are significantly more likely than married women to identify their spouse as their primary, and often only, source of emotional support. Not one of their sources. Their source. The single channel through which every difficult feeling, every fear, every moment of doubt or joy gets processed. This is what psychologists studying attachment theory would recognize as a problematic dependency structure, a pattern John Bowlby's foundational work on human attachment first identified, where an individual routes all emotional regulation through a single bond. The healthy version of this looks like secure attachment. The version that forms quietly inside many marriages looks like something else. An entire social support network collapsed down to one person. For women, this is almost never the case. Women tend to maintain broader, deeper networks of emotional connection, relationships where emotional disclosure is normalized, where vulnerability is not treated as weakness. They have friends they actually confide in. They have the social infrastructure to absorb a bad week, a hard conversation, a marriage that's going through a rough patch. For most married men, that infrastructure does not exist. It was handed over piece by piece to one person, and that's a single point of failure. Think about what that actually means in practice. When a system in engineering is built around a single point of failure, it means that if that one component breaks down, the entire system collapses. There is no redundancy, no backup, no alternative pathway that kicks in when the primary one goes offline. That is exactly what the support monopoly creates inside a marriage. When the relationship is warm and close, when the communication is good and the intimacy is present, the married man functions. He may not have friends he can really talk to. He may have drifted from the people he used to know. But it does not matter, because the one channel he has is open and working. He is, by most measures, genuinely happier than a single man. The research supports that too. Married men consistently report higher well-being than their single peers. But that finding contains a hidden trap, because the same research also tells us something else. The highest rates of depression among men are not found in men who are single. They are found in men who are married and disconnected. When the channel closes, or even just narrows, there is nothing to fall back on, and the channel does narrow. In most marriages, at some point, it narrows. It might narrow because of a dead bedroom, that quiet, corrosive loss of physical intimacy that neither partner quite knows how to talk about, and so, eventually, neither does. It might narrow because of the slow accumulation of small rejections, the moments that feel like nothing individually, but that build over months and years into a wall neither person quite remembers building. It might narrow because of the weight of parenting, or the grind of financial stress, or two people simply growing in different directions without noticing. Whatever the cause, the result for the man is the same. The one person he has is becoming less available. The single channel through which he processes everything is getting quieter. And unlike a single man who at least knows he is lonely, who has some language for it and some legitimacy in feeling it, the married man has no permission to claim that what he is experiencing is loneliness. He is not alone. He has a wife, he has a family, he has a house full of people, and so he sits with it in silence. He tells himself it is a phase. He tells himself all marriages go through this. He stops naming the feeling because the feeling does not have a name that fits his situation, and because naming it would mean admitting something he is not ready to admit. That's why the signs of a lonely husband are so hard to read, even for the husband himself. He withdraws into work, into screens, or into a corner of the house that quietly and unofficially becomes his. There is a flattening of affect. He stops bringing things up because bringing things up has not worked, and at some point a man stops knocking on a door that does not open. It does not look like loneliness from the outside. It looks like a quiet man living a normal life. There's a cruel irony at the center of all this that rarely gets named. The very traits that make many men good husbands and good providers, including the capacity to carry things without complaint, the trained instinct to handle it, and the deep discomfort with placing an emotional burden on someone else, are the same traits that make the support monopoly so dangerous for them. A man who has spent his whole life learning not to ask for help doesn't suddenly know how to ask for help when the one person he would ask is the source of the pain. And so he doesn't ask. He adjusts. He manages. He goes quiet in exactly the ways that make his wife feel even more disconnected from him, which narrows the channel further, which deepens the isolation, which he continues to manage in silence. That's not a cycle that resolves on its own. Persistent loneliness is directly linked to depression, anxiety, cardiovascular risk, and elevated rates of suicide. Men are nearly 4 times more likely than women to die by suicide. According to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the demographic carrying the highest risk among working-age men sits squarely in middle age. These are men in the thick of the very life stage where the support monopoly is most likely to have fully formed and quietly collapsed. These aren't men without families. Many of them have families. They've just lost the only emotional connection they allowed themselves to depend on, and they have nowhere to take that loss. So, what's actually happening here, and what can a man do when he recognizes it? The first step is to name the mechanism, because you can't fix something you can't see. The support monopoly isn't a character flaw. It's not evidence that a man is weak or needy or has failed at his marriage. It's the predictable outcome of a social architecture that was never designed to support what it's being asked to carry. The friendships didn't disappear because the man stopped caring about other people. They disappeared because life contracted around a single relationship and nobody noticed until the contraction was complete. And that means the path forward is, in part, about rebuilding the architecture, not to replace the marriage, but to stop placing the entire structural load of an emotional life onto one connection that was never built to bear it alone. It means rebuilding an actual social support network, not a list of contacts, but relationships with real emotional depth. It means treating friendships with the same intentionality most men bring to work and to family. It means deciding that maintaining a real friendship with someone who actually knows you isn't a luxury or a sign of weakness or something that can wait until things settle down. Things don't settle down. Every married man with kids and a mortgage already knows this. The time doesn't appear on its own. You have to make it. And it means, where possible, being honest with yourself about what's happening inside your marriage. Not performing fine when you're not. Not choosing silence as the default response to distance. Not waiting until the channel closes completely before acknowledging that it's been narrowing for years. The male loneliness epidemic is real, but the conversation around it is incomplete because it keeps looking in the wrong direction. It looks at single men, at young men, at men without partners. It misses the men sitting at the dinner table every night, sleeping next to someone, living surrounded by people, and experiencing a loneliness so total and so quiet that they don't even have a name for it. The loneliest man in America isn't alone. That's exactly the problem. If any part of this landed, if some part of you recognized that description, the most important thing you can do right now is leave a comment. Not because it helps the algorithm, although it does, but because naming the thing out loud, even once, even anonymously in a comment section, is the first step to stopping it from running the rest of your life in silence. We'll be back next week, and we're just getting started.